Do you understand why? Do you understand what the main communication breakdown was?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I'm still trying to process it. I'm going to be real with you. I think that something happened along the way, and he decided that I was manipulating him or running defense for you, which was not my intent, to be clear. So.
Yeah. Okay. So here's what's going on. As the chief Mr. Girl translator, that's still my I still moonlight as that. Okay. Um, so one of the big problems is Max has a worldview that he cannot step out of, but he also doesn't feel the need to justify. So the issue you're running into, and ironically, it's kind of the issue with his report, is that in Max's worldview, being mean to people online is a form of abuse. And that's just kind of taken for granted. That's why when he DM'd you, that's why he said he didn't want to have to justify or defend the fact that I abused Anna, that I abused Lav, that I abused him, because that's just a given, that being mean to people in a certain way is abuse. And the reason why his article or report or whatever the fuck he wants to call it, the reason why it didn't land the way that he wants it to, and the reason why it won't land the way that he wants it to, is because he's missing the crucial section where he needs to lay out what abuse is and how people like me further abuse. Instead, what he does is he just gives you a whole bunch of actions of mine, assuming you've already bought into his paradigm, because in his world, no other paradigm exists, and then it should be self-evident that Destiny doing XYZ action is obviously abusive. Well, because if you're in my world, you already know these things are abuse. Like that's kind of the issue with what he's got set up, and it's why he was getting so frustrated with you. A really good example of this is that rape analogy is very telling, right? When you still hear me, right?
I can still hear you. Go on.
Yeah. When Max uses the rape analogy, the reason why that analogy hits so hard for him is because in his world, rape is analogous to being mean to somebody. If you're raping, if somebody gets raped and then you ask them, well, hold on, you said that you got raped, but doesn't everybody rape here? Or you said you got raped, but was it really that bad? Didn't you rape somebody? These would obviously be ridiculous questions.
He did use that. Yeah, he did use that analogy a few times. And again, as I said to him, and I'll say to you, right? Like, if that was his accusation, we would have an entirely different conversation. But his accusation.
Yeah, but the reason why the rape accusation or the analogy works for him is because in his mind, me being mean to somebody is the same thing. It is wrong. It is abuse. It's just as, maybe not just as bad as raping somebody, but it is. Okay. But the problem is he never actually takes any time to justify that. So instead, it's just a bunch of garbage that's spewed that you're just supposed to believe.
So do you think he was, I guess, to kind of piggyback some of the last exchange we had, do you think that he was good faith, quote unquote, in this article, in the sense that he believes that you are abusive, manipulative, you take advantage of power dynamics that are sexually abusive, etc.? Do you think that he's honest?
Yeah, I think he truly believes it. Yeah, I do. I don't think he's dishonest. He doesn't strike me as a dishonest person. You just have to keep in mind that he's coming from a very particular frame of reference. And in his frame of reference, everything kind of makes sense. But he never does anything to justify or build that frame of reference, right? So for instance, if I was going to argue the DDoS story to somebody, that I wanted to kill this kid and his dad, which I did and still would, based, fuck those two people. But if I wanted to argue that, I know that to most people, that's going to sound really crazy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a lot of groundwork to try to lay out, well, I believe in self-defense. I think that if you're going to try to take somebody's income, especially if they've got a family, I'm going to do work to build that out. And you might agree or disagree along the way, which is fine, but I'm at least going to make the effort to do that. In Max's world, he needs to take time to justify why the actions that I'm taking are abusive. Not just give actions that I'm doing and claim they're abusive, right? But he plays a few tricks where he'll rely on some things that are obviously bad, like grabbing somebody's boob on stream, yes, or obviously bad, I guess, ostensibly, like threatening to kill somebody. But then he'll conflate these with things like being mean to Lav or being mean to him. Or like him being mean to other people as part of the ecosystem. But the frustrating thing for him is that when you ask, well, isn't this part of the ecosystem? In his mind, these things are already obviously immorally wrong. That you asking that question just feels like a giant a diversion, a whataboutism. It's the equivalent to saying like, okay, well, sure, you got raped, but don't a lot of people rape in this fraternity? That's why he's getting so frustrated. But he hasn't laid the groundwork out to justify his worldview, because a narcissist doesn't need to. His worldview is just correct, and it doesn't need justification. I think that's how I view it.
It became evident in the conversation that it was going to be very hard to actually get him to answer the questions, because he felt it was manipulative, and because he felt he was being manipulated, he was going to respond as if he was manipulated. And I think that kind of, it was a demonstration to me, who has not engaged in this space at the same level as he has, or other Destiny orbiters have, or other people in other orbits like 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙 orbit have, that just kind of drove home. Man, it was, man, I don't know what I can believe from him and what I cannot. Like, what is he saying that is true, and what is he saying that he believes to be true, but is just the result of kind of this conspiratorial mindset that he's kind of set up.
I think that's kind of the issue, and that's why these interviews would have been so important. He needed an editor to weave. What he should have done is, if he wanted to sell this story, first he needed to figure out what the fuck he was even trying to argue, because I'm not sure what he was trying to prove with me. Was it that I was sexually abusive? Was it just I was sexually coercive? Was it just that I'm mean to people? Was it that I use my platform? I don't even know what point he's trying to sell. So we're already off to a really bad start. But once he identified that, what he needed to do was he needed to hone in on like 2 to 4 stories that like play a big aspect of furthering that abuse. Right?
He tried to cover everything, but ended up covering nothing. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what happens, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe he wants to, what he could have said is, Destiny engages in retaliation in a way that makes future criticism of him impossible. Here are 3 examples of that happening. When 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 attacked Destiny on stream, he attacked her. When a kid, DDoSed his internet connection, he threatened to kill them. When he got into a scuffle with 𝕾𝖍𝖎𝖙 because he leaked her nudes where he was in the wrong, he threatened to get her fired for a situation that he started. He could have built on these 3 stories and in a very, very short, cohesive manner laid out this idea, and then he could have left it open for the future. Maybe there are other orbiters in the future that are scared to criticize Destiny because they've seen the retaliation he's taken in the past. Even if those were justified, other people, this is like a potential storyline that he's got all the material there for it, but in his world, he doesn't need to justify or write any of that. You should just agree with it automatically without even thinking about it. But the presentation and everything is obviously so fucked and poor because he doesn't feel like he needs to justify himself. And that's like the perpetual problem that he has in his life. That's why the only people that he'll ever find himself surrounded with agreeing with him are people that he's manipulated. So 𝕾𝖎𝖏 and his zombie fuck girlfriend 𝕾𝖍𝖏. Nobody else will ever agree with him, but as long as he's got the people around him he's manipulated, it's enough for him to I guess infinitely vibe into the fucking echo chamber. Yeah.
2 things. One just real quick, the idea that it needed to be more concise. There was a reason, regardless of what you think of this, that the Twitter files were released drip, 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 and so people could digest them. Releasing them all at once would have been even worse than the reception that they had. The second thing, since you're here, right? I guess I'll ask you this. Do you think, right, that what do you feel is, if you had to kind of critique yourself or write a manifesto or report on yourself, what's your biggest regret in this space of doing? What do you wish you were oh man, I fucked up. I wish I would never engaged in that. That was a terrible thing. I was legit bad for doing this.
I'd have to think a lot. I think something that Max has made me aware of, although I become more aware of this every time, is there. So I have I've got a model of charitability, and I've got a model of engaging with non-standard creators that's very unique to my model of success. So I'm the only streamer my size that would ever talk to somebody like Max. I'm the only streamer of my size that would ever engage with a lot of with all the politics people, for instance, right?
When I left the Twitch
sure. When I left the Twitch politics, 𝕵𝖎𝖎𝖙 isn't engaging with any of you guys. Hassan sure as fuck isn't engaging with anybody. None of the people that are hanging off of Hassan are trying to engage with anybody, right? So in one way, that's a benefit to me and to the ecosystem and to everybody else around me. I guess in a Machiavellian sort of sense, I kind of figure that I see the benefit to myself, I see the benefit to my audience, and I see the benefit to the people around me, and that should be enough, but it clearly isn't. Something I learned a long time ago in interpersonal relationships is you can't really listen to what people say. You have to do a little bit of mind reading, or you've got to like understand that like, listen, you might say you're okay with something, but I don't know if you're gonna be. I either have to like take that agency from you, or I need to like give you more information or something. And there's probably better ways that I could go about like integrating people into my stream ecosystem. I'm not really sure how, and it feels really strange to do it with adults. Like,
Well,
yeah, even.
I mean,
Or go ahead.
one substantive criticism that I think I would levy, right? Is that, yeah, I mean, sleeping with your fans or sleeping with other streamers and orbiters probably isn't the wisest thing, and it does have a lot of potential for abuse. So whether or not it was abusive in the instances he's laid out, right? The fact that like someone does sleep with their orbiters, sleep with their fans, yeah, that does raise red flags with people, and I think that's a fair criticism, isn't it?
No, I understand what you're saying. So this is something that I would say. There are red flags for sure, but a red flag is a red flag. A red flag is not a mine, right? A red flag is maybe there's something there. There's an interesting world that I'm in. I've thought about this a lot today and yesterday actually. Is that sometimes people will criticize me for a certain behavior, but it's not actually the behavior that's the problem. It's like an abstraction from the behavior. So, for instance, like people might say like, "Oh, like you've got a problem because you've like fucked too many people or whatever," and it's like that's not really the problem though. The problem right now is Max. The problem is other people that obsess over it. I feel like if anything, and I know that this won't be the takeaway, but I feel like if anything, Max probably reached out to 40 plus people. He's probably got like 50 plus hours of interviews. He's built his whole Anna and fucking lab narrative. All of this shit that he's built out on, unless I missed it, there was not a single instance of anything that he's done of any sexual misconduct whatsoever, except for maybe Mia Rose, if you want to say that, which is fair. But that wasn't like an abuse of power, like I'm doing. That was like me who, for the second time in my life, I got way too fucking wasted on a stream and was being stupid, right? So like, yeah, I mean, are there red flags for sure? But like, I don't think I've ever. No. Let me put it this way.
Okay.
No streamer would ever get their life vetted as hard as I have and come out that clean, okay? And I'm not trying to fucking jerk myself up or whatever, but like, holy
I
shit,
don't
like
know
this
about
guy.
that, but okay.
Absolutely, bro. Do you know how many fucking streamers and all these motherfuckers are rapists, creepy fucking losers? Like, bro, so many guys in this industry are. So many streamers in this industry are. Like, absolutely.
This is why I
do
asked
agree.
him that question. Yeah, this is why I asked him that question about like why Destiny, right? And he said, "Oh, you're just trying to distract or thing." Because I think the conversation to be had, and you're absolutely right. Like, if you find me the man and I'll find you the crime. Isn't that a good quote? But like if you turn over the rocks in the streamer world, there's all sorts of dark things underneath. Because I think that the incentive structures, the parasociality of this space is a problem. There's a problem here. So yeah. That's what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, and also this is like kind of annoying, and I have a disposition. I've got a demeanor where people don't give a fuck about being fucked up towards me, which at this point I kind of own. I don't whatever, but like the ousting of like all of kind of my personal sexual relationships and like details of my stuff, considering there's no abuse, is actually really fucked up. It's really fucking weird. If me and Lab were in reversed positions, Lab's career would be fucking over. Could you imagine if I fucked some random bimbo dipshit and was online talking about their roast beef meat flaps to some Nazi dude in a Discord, and then he leaked lies about the sexual encounter? My career would be over, right? It would be like completely over. But whereas like Lab, and I think that Lab's story for sexual abuse is way more interesting, right? Because I would argue that her relationship with me sexually was abusive in terms of her leaking everything, lying about the details, and then the fact that she would like hit on multiple people online. She started the sexuality in our relationships, and then there's an interesting story with her and Hassan where she tried to hit on Hassan. Hassan ignored her. And then because she got upset about that, she ends up making up a story about him fucking an underage girl that never happened, right? Like those are situations that are genuinely like that's sexually abusive, crazy fucking shit. But somehow like all of that flies under the radar, and then it's like, oh well, I'm just gonna write a 7,000 page fucking story like digging up all sorts of random shit about my personal like Destiny's personal life. In a way, it's like this. It just feels a little bit like salacious. Like, was any of this necessary? Did you need to include like as many details as you did? It just feels kind of weird, but I guess because I'm a guy, it's like cool and funny to just like out a bunch of like my personal random relationships. I will say though, and I will always leave this invitation open, if somebody does feel like I'm being sexually abusive, or if you feel like I've sexually abused you or some bullshit or whatever, if someone wants to write about that or investigate that, that's fair. But like, that wasn't what this was. That wasn't written anywhere here. Lav herself admitted that, and none of it was even included in terms of anything in this. So I don't know. It's just, I guess it's a little bit dehumanizing, I guess, to me, that like my personal life kind of becomes this playground for people to like, do exploratory shitty slam poetry writing on for 50,000 fucking pages to boost views on their page. Yeah.
I get it. And like I said, like I told Mr. Girl, and I'll tell you, I don't know you, to be very clear. Like I don't have the only relationship we have is a working one. I'm not familiar with your past, your lore, or anything like that. So the value that I found in Max's report was that he did illustrate some of the misbehavior of your past, perhaps. But that said, right, and what I would wish I could have asked him if he had stayed, my question was like, okay, what do you want to happen to Destiny because of all this, right? What is the result, or what should be the result of all this information being public? If I sit here and I read and I believe every single word of this document, then what, right? Should you go to jail? Like, should you be deplatformed? What is it that he wanted to happen? And I was very curious.
Well, I think for him, I think what he said in one of his hotlines, he wanted me to lose all of my platforms so that I wouldn't have access to people to abuse anymore. Because that's when him and Lav were gaslighting each other, and they were like, and then he went on Lex Friedman, and all I could think of was all the new women that he was going to abuse.
Okay, fair enough. Is there anything else you'd like to set the record straight on when it comes to the report? There's a lot of rumors floating around.
Yeah, there are a lot of weird rumors floating around. I mean, all I'll say is that like I feel like it's kind of gross that like people want to dig through like so much of my personal life. I understand like the temptation to and the desire to, and I wish I could do like a stream where like I cry for 30 minutes and I talk about how it's so gross and invasive and blah blah blah. Like, if I'm not making it public, like you guys shouldn't be public on my shit and you guys shouldn't speculate. Even if you're British, like I could obviously play that game and do that. I mean, I don't really care to, but I will say at the end of the day, dude, there were so many details in that article that were incorrect. Like, do you remember when Matt Walsh was on Joe Rogan and somebody asked him about like how many kids do you think are on puberty blockers, and he said 3 million kids? When somebody makes a mistake like that, you got to wonder, like, did you do any research for your documentary at all? When Max legitimately thought that Linus Tech Tips was on my fucking stream having these conversations. Like, this guy almost sold his company for like $100 million, and you think he's fucking in the Anna drama? Like, what the fuck is... Like, there were quite a few small mistakes like that he made. He thought that Nicole, that one girl, was a professional fucking gamer or streamer. She never was. There were a lot of little mistakes like that, which kind of shows the importance of, like, one, why you need an editor, two, why somebody besides your mindfuck, brainwashed, manipulated, like, abuse victims should probably be proofreading, besides you. And then three, that he probably should have reached out to other parties for comment, me included, even if he hates me and maybe doesn't want to, because it's how you write a proper article like this. Like, hey, do you have feedback? Do you want to correct anything here? Do you want to say anything there? Like, obviously, I'm not going to be able to dictate the content, but having factual inaccuracies like that really hurts, because it makes me wonder, what did you spend? Like, you spent 4 months working on an article that looks like it was written in a 3-day fever dream. Like, that's what it feels like.
I get you.
And then also my last thing, and then sorry, my last thing too is, I think this is important as well. I believe that like the reason why he worked so hard on the transcriptions is because Max really needs you to, and he said this in other words, in more clever words, but he really needs you to strip the context from everything in order to sell the narrative that he wants to, and doing transcriptions is a much more effective way of doing that. So that he can have a quote from Dan in there, I think, saying something like, oh, like, you don't want to bring the ire of DGG on you. When Dan is saying it, it's clearly a joke, but when you read it in text format, you don't have that video context. It feels quite a bit different, more insidious. But
yeah, so yeah, that was mentioned several times, and I think Mindwaves put out a tweet about that. I did want to ask him, like, why did he include the link to the VODs in some instances, but in other instances not? I mean, it could be a perfectly rational explanation. I had trouble finding some of the VODs, so I just couldn't link it, and we needed to get it out. That was fair, right? But I guess I'd just ask you this, right? I hear you about the factual inaccuracies, right? But a critic might say that you were just using those little mistakes to cover for the bigger accusation in and of itself, and whether or not they were factually accurate with the whether or not that one girl was a gamer streamer or not, does that not that doesn't really play into the accusation itself, right?
No, the Nicole shit was horrible. I treated her terribly. That was like super fucked up. Like
Okay.
I don't disagree with that,
Fair
but it's
enough.
like, but it's just kind of weird that, and I understand because my life is public. This happened, was it 11 or 12 years ago? Like it's strange sometimes that like I made up with Nicole 9 years ago. So is it every new 2 years I'm gonna get a new schizoid that's gonna roll out like every single piece of drama? Like I've already said it was fucked up. I already said it was bad. It was horrible. And people always focus on the leaked nudes part. That wasn't even the part that she was mad at. She was mad because I called her ugly, which was really fucked up. It was really shitty of me to do it. There's no defense for it. Same thing with the 𝕵𝖎𝖎 stuff. Even if I was like super wasted, obviously I shouldn't be grabbing somebody's boobs on stream. But like, is it like, so it's like every 2 or 3 years do we need, like I'm not gonna record a fucking YouTube apology stream where I cry about like the shit. Oh, I shouldn't have. Like I was young. I was 22 or whatever. I was fucking retarded. I shouldn't have done it. It was stupid. But like, what am I gonna have like a like self-admitted rapist Max like coming to me to tell me that I have to like apologize for these things every 2 or 3 years? Like no, it's fucking ridiculous.
Make a
And I
video
think
so
when you're
you can
digging up stuff,
replay it every time, right? And make a video of you
what?
apologizing for these things, and then every time someone
I've
mentions,
already I've talked about it now. I don't think anybody
just replay
genuinely
it.
cares.
So it's
Yeah, but like,
kind of meaningless.
I don't know. Like, do you think, like, if I had that video out there, do you think Max would be like, oh, okay, Destiny's apologized for this, I'm gonna leave it alone?
Obviously
Like, I don't
not,
think so.
right? But
Yeah,
it's more of a meme
yeah.
question.
So I mean, like, I'll keep people. I'll just have people keep that in mind. I'm human. Like, I've lived my whole life. Basically, every aspect of my life is public. And if in 12 years part of your write up has to include shit that I did over a decade ago, I think for the most part I'm doing okay. I think I've lived a decent life. I haven't done too many fucking stupid things. If you get drama, no, not to say I'm perfect. And obviously I have made mistakes. And the Nicole shit was like really fucked up of me to do. And the 𝕵𝖎𝖎 shit was stupid too. I'll still defend the DDoS shit to this day. Fuck that kid and fuck his dad, Jacob. If you're listening, fuck you and fuck your dad Wayne as well. Fuck both of you losers.
That was
But, yeah.
another the major criticisms I had. I substantively disagree with that, but
Good.
it's neither here nor
I'm glad.
neither here nor there. But okay, well, thank you for coming on, and thank you for talking about this with me. I know that it's been kind of a whirlwind for you, I'm sure. And yeah. So anything else?
No. Yeah, chill. Have fun.
You too, man. See you later.
Be careful. Bye.
What a stream, gang. What a stream.